In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on December 15th, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Detroit Pistons versus Boston Celtics. The Detroit Pistons head to TD Garden on Monday night to take on the Boston Celtics, and it sets up as one of those spots where perception and reality do not quite match up fully yet. The Pistons expect to have a full squad available for this one, which is a nice change for them, while the Celtics are still without Jason Tatum and have to keep adjusting on the fly without their main scorer. The Pistons come into this matchup with real momentum after smashing the Hawks for their third straight win on Friday, and a team on a little win streak usually plays with a loose confidence you can feel from the opening tip. They have the benefit of a fully healthy roster, but at the same time the Celtics were on a strong run themselves before that setback against the Bucks, and now they are back at home where they have taken 7 of their last 8 games, which matters a lot in a building like TD Garden. So you can see why the Celtics are getting some benefit of the doubt from the market, just because they are at home and have put together a solid couple of weeks, and bettors tend to remember those recent covers first. Boston has covered the spread in 8 of their last 10 games, which makes them look like the safer, more predictable side at a glance. On the other hand, the Pistons have dropped 3 of their last 8 games and are 3-7 against the spread in their last 10, which sounds ugly on paper, and it does make you hesitate for a second. But here is the thing, the Pistons have still shown more over the full season, have repeatedly proved they can win on the road, and they remain a profitable 14-11 against the spread even after those failed recent covers, so the broader picture is kinder than the short-term one. They are also 4-1 straight up this season as an underdog and have won outright in 5 of their last 6 games overall when catching points, which quietly tells you they handle the underdog role better than most people expect. You simply do not see the Pistons getting points very often, and when that happens, it tends to signal a bit of value if you trust their season-long profile more than the last week of headlines. As our first pick for this matchup, the Detroit Pistons to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The Detroit Pistons are averaging 119.6 points on 48.6% shooting and allowing 113.3 points on 44.6% shooting, so their games usually have some rhythm and quite a bit of shot making on both ends. They are hitting 35.6% from beyond the arc and 75.1% from the free throw line, which is solid enough that empty trips are not a constant problem, and that kind of efficiency tends to keep the scoreboard moving steadily. They are also allowing 36.1% shooting from deep and grabbing 46.5 rebounds per game, which hints at some second chance chances and a willingness to trade buckets rather than shut teams down completely. On the other side, the Boston Celtics are averaging 116.8 points on 47% shooting and allowing 110.8 points on 45.1% shooting, so their profile is similar, just a touch lower in raw scoring but still clearly offense capable. The Celtics are shooting 36.5% from 3 and 78.5% from the free throw line, which pairs nicely with Detroit's scoring numbers because both teams are comfortable from deep and do not waste too many trips at the line. Boston is allowing 37.2% shooting from beyond the arc and pulling in 43.6 rebounds per game, which again suggests that opponents can get going from outside and that there are enough possessions to keep totals honest. Put together, these stats point toward a matchup where both teams can score, both can give up some clean looks, and the overall pace and efficiency lean more toward a higher combined total than a slog, even if one side goes a little cold for a stretch. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Toronto Raptors versus Miami Heat. Miami comes into this one at home laying about 6 points with a total sitting in the high 200s and 30s, and on first glance it looks like the classic just trust the track meet team kind of spot. Look a little wider, though. Both teams are basically in the same boat right now, with Toronto at 15-11, Miami at 14-11, and both riding 4-game losing streaks after getting bounced from the NBA Cup. The Raptors by New York and the Heat by Orlando. This feels a lot more like a reset game than some kind of victory lap for a juggernaut that has everything figured out. Miami has been playing like the league's sprinter, pushing the fastest pace in the NBA at roughly 105 possessions per 48 minutes and letting it fly from deep with close to 35 three-point attempts a night. Toronto, by contrast, is much more comfortable around that 100-possession tempo, with an offense built on ball movement, size on the wings, and offensive rebounding rather than constant run and gun. The market is clearly baking in that stylistic clash, plus Miami's home court edge where they are 10-2 straight up and 8-5 against the spread, so the number leans toward the shiny fast team in a way that feels natural at first. Once you start digging into the matchup, though, things look more balanced than the spread suggests. Toronto sits in the top 10 in defensive efficiency and 7th in opponent points per game, and that kind of sturdy, switchable defense is exactly the sort that can bother an attack like Miami's, which is high-powered but leans heavily on threes and pace. When you depend that much on tempo and perimeter shooting, you are always one cold stretch away from looking very human against a disciplined group that does not need to send help on every touch. Yes, the Raptors have been rough to back lately, sitting at 10-16 against the spread overall and coming off that loss to the Knicks where they were without Emmanuel Quickley and R.J. Barrett. But that kind of skid, especially heading into a spotlight game against the fastest team in the league, is often exactly what nudges a line out a little too far and creates value on the team that suddenly looks less fashionable. With Quickley now off the injury report, their guard play gets a boost, and their usual strengths in size and half-court defense start to look undervalued instead of fragile. With Barrett still out with a right knee sprain, Jamison battle listed as probable, and depth names like Chucky Hepburn, A.J. Lawson, and Elijah Martin sitting in that G League or two-way bucket on the official report, the Raptors' real core rotation of Barnes, Ingram, Quickley, Poeltl, and Agbaji is intact. On the Miami side, Tyler Herro is available, rookie guard Kasparis Jakučionis is probable, and role players Pelle Larsson and Terry Rozier are sidelined, which leaves the Heat leaning even harder on Bam Adebayo, Herro, Norman Powell, and Andrew Wiggins to keep that frantic style going for 4 quarters. In a spot where both teams are desperate to stop the slide, and everyone knows exactly how fast Miami wants to make this game, that extra length, rebounding, and versatility on the Toronto side makes this number feel a couple of points too inflated toward the home favorite rather than a fair tax on Miami's speed and home aura. That is why, even acknowledging that lines and injury reports can still shift before tip, this shapes up as a buy low opportunity on a legitimately strong Raptors group in a market that has tilted more toward the buzz around Miami's pace and recent home blowouts than the full season profile for both squads. As our first pick for this matchup, the Toronto Raptors to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. On one side you have Miami, fastest pace in the league, already logging 5 separate outings with 140-plus points and running an offense that is more than happy to let it fly from deep. They just tied a franchise mark with 24 made threes and shot over 52% from beyond the arc in that blowout of the Clippers, so it is easy to see why odds makers and bettors get stars in their eyes when they think about a Heat total in the high 200s and 30s. On the other side, Toronto is quietly sitting in the top 10 in defense by both opponents' scoring and efficiency, playing at a slower than average tempo, and has leaned toward the under at 11-15 on the season. Miami, for all the fireworks, is only slightly to the over overall at 13-12, and actually tilts under at home at 6-7, which hints that once games in that building slow into more structured half-court possessions, the scoring does not always match the pace headline. Both teams are also coming off emotionally and physically taxing cup runs, each with 4 straight losses, and that kind of stretch often nudges coaches toward a slightly shorter rotation and more deliberate, playoff-style possessions. Toronto's offense under Darko Rajakovic leans more toward extra passes and crashing the glass than firing early clock threes, so even against a fast opponent, they are not wired to turn this into a full-court track meet just for the thrill of it. Miami allows the most opponent three-point attempts in the league, which at first sounds like a pure green light for an over, but the Raptors are still one of the lower-volume three-point shooting teams and would rather use their length to grind out paint touches, post-ups, and second-chance looks than trade trays in a wild shootout. With both defenses sitting in or around the top 10 by advanced metrics, Barrett's still out as a scoring option on the wing for Toronto, Rozier out for Miami's bench offense due to his league discipline issues, and a spread that hints at a fairly competitive, whistle-heavy fourth quarter instead of garbage time chaos. This total in the high 200s and 30s starts to look more like a tribute to Miami's highlight ceiling than a true median outcome. Given the defensive quality, Toronto's slower tempo, and the likelihood of slightly tighter rotations on both sides, the matchup leans more toward finishing below such an inflated number than sailing past it, at least on paper. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Dallas Mavericks versus Utah Jazz. If you are looking at this matchup cold, it is easy to think, two losing records, coin flip, move on. But once you look a little closer, these two are playing very different styles of basketball right now, and that matters a lot more than the simple 10-16 versus 9-15 record suggest. Dallas has quietly reshaped itself into a defense-first group, sitting near the better end of the league in defensive efficiency while living with a bottom-tier offense that grinds its way to points rather than lighting it up. Utah has leaned in the opposite direction, with top-tier scoring, a defense at the lower end of the league, and a pace that keeps scoreboards working overtime. That contrast alone already pulls this game away from shrug and guess territory. Context helps too. Dallas has taken 5 of its last 6 games and is coming off a grinding 119-111 home win over Brooklyn, where they actually closed strong instead of letting it slip late. Utah just snapped its own rough stretch by outracing Memphis 130-126 at home behind a heavy offensive burst, which is very on brand for them right now. One team is winning with stops and structure, the other with speed and shot making. On the personnel side, everything in this handicap is built around the rosters and injury notes you laid out. For Dallas, the current active group includes names like Anthony Davis, Cooper Flagg, P.J. Washington, Klay Thompson, Daniel Gafford, Max Christie, Najee Marshall, Ryan Nembhard, and D'Angelo Russell, with Davis and Gafford officially questionable for this game because of a left calf contusion and right ankle management. D'Angelo Russell is ruled out with illness, and Kyrie Irving, Derek Lively II, and Dante Exum are all listed as out long-term. For Utah, the frame is built around Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Kyle Anderson, Ace Bailey, Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Kevin Love, Svi Mykhailiuk, Taylor Hendricks, Cody Williams, and the rest of that group, with Jusuf Nurkic resting, George Ning dealing with a foot issue, and Walker Kessler out for the season after shoulder surgery. So Utah comes in thin on true rim protection and size again, while Dallas, even if Davis and Gafford are less than 100%, still holds the functional advantage inside. Stylistically, Dallas leans into that edge. They keep the pace around a slightly above average level, operate comfortably in the half court, and trust a defense at roughly top 10 level to drag opponents into awkward, late clock possessions. Utah pushes for the opposite kind of game, with one of the faster tempos in the league and a 3-heavy shot profile built to run up scores. The problem is that their defense gives up points at a rate that sits very near the bottom of the NBA, so the chaos cuts both ways. Once you pair all that with the actual number on the board, a spread sitting around Mavericks -2 with Dallas as a small road favorite in Salt Lake City, the key question becomes pretty simple. Do you trust the steadier defensive identity that has won 5 of 6, or the volatile, streaky home underdog whose coach was just chewing them out on national clips a week ago? Honestly, Utah's style is fun, and in a single game burst it can absolutely work, which is why this does not feel like a layup pick either way at first glance. But with both Nurkic and Kessler sidelined, they are pushed into more small ball and switching looks that have already struggled on the defensive end, and that is where Dallas has enough size, physicality, and late-game execution to keep attacking the same soft spots when it matters most. Even if Davis or Gafford were ruled out closer to tip, the recent surge from Dallas has already baked in their front court depth and defensive approach, so this red leans more on that sustainable identity than any single game-time decision. That is speculative, sure, but it is built on the current injury notes you mentioned and on how these versions of the teams are actually playing right now, not on old reputations. As our first pick for this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Utah games already feel like track meets most nights. They are averaging a little over 118 points themselves, pushing pace into the low 100s, taking close to 43s a game, and carrying one of the worst defensive ratings around. That cocktail naturally leads to box scores that often land in that 240-point neighborhood. Dallas, though, acts as the weight that keeps the whole thing from floating away too easily. Their offense has been bottom 5 by efficiency but closer to league average in raw scoring, while their defense lives in the upper tier of the league, and their pace is just above 101 possessions, fast enough to avoid slog, but not reckless. If you blend the season-long scoring for both sides, you end up nearer to roughly 230 points than 238, and several independent models have flagged that Mavericks games have cleared 237.5 in only a minority of their outings, even with Utah's wild totals profile hanging around the mid-200s and 30s. Injuries quietly push away from a full-blown shootout as well. Kyrie Irving is still out with that knee issue, D'Angelo Russell is sidelined with illness, and Dante Exum plus Derek Lively took are done for the year, which trims Dallas's guard creation and transition pop. At the same time, it nudges them further into lineups that defend, rebound, and slow things down a touch more often. So the expectation of a rotation tilted more toward defense for Dallas is not a wild guess. It follows directly from the current injury picture you laid out. On the Jazz side, no Nurkic, no Kessler, and no Niang almost certainly pushes them toward more 5-out spacing. That can absolutely create explosive offensive stretches, but it also takes away their best backline deterrence and some of their second-chance rebounding. When the threes stop falling for a few minutes, those lineups can hit ugly droughts, and Dallas is exactly the sort of disciplined defense that can turn those cold spells into long stretches of half-court grind instead of constant trading of haymakers. If you add in the situational layer, Dallas bringing a defense-focused identity on the road, tired legs in Utah's altitude leading to flatter jumpers in the second half, and both teams having just played emotional games over the weekend, the number starts to look slightly high compared to their combined offensive efficiency. It does not mean they cannot shoot the lights out or turn this into a fireworks show. It just means that, based on what these versions of the teams have shown and the current injury context, the more likely script is a game that feels fast at times but ends a few possessions shy of that lofty total. That is a data-leaning projection, not a guarantee, but it tilts away from expecting a pure all-star style scoreline. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Houston Rockets versus Denver Nuggets. The Houston Rockets roll into Ball Arena on Monday night to face the Denver Nuggets, and it has the feel of one of those early season tone setters more than just another game on the schedule. On the Rockets side, they are still listed without Dorian Finney-Smith and Fred VanVleet, with Terry Eason tagged as questionable, so they are not exactly at full strength on paper. The Nuggets are dealing with their own absences, still missing Aaron Gordon and Christian Braun, while Julian Strawther has been bumped up to questionable, which at least hints at a bit more depth off the bench. Even with the injuries, both teams come into this one with solid momentum and a sense that things are trending the right way. The Rockets did not look all that convincing in that narrow win over the slumping Clippers on Thursday, but outside of that they have basically been one of the hotter teams in the league, stacking wins and confidence at the same time. You could say something similar about the Nuggets, who show up here riding a 4-game winning streak that reminds everyone how hard they are to handle when they get even a little comfortable. These teams last met on November 21st, when the Nuggets pulled out a 112-109 win behind a near triple-double from Jokic, which sounds about right for him. The note in the original write-up that Kevin Durant had just 13 points in that game comes off as surprising, since that kind of off night from a star usually flips a close contest, and the idea is that a repeat of that low-scoring output is not very likely. That angle ties into the feeling that this rematch sets up as something of a response spot for the Rockets, a chance to show they can hang in a similar script but with better individual production. Originally, the lean was toward Denver as a small home favorite, which makes sense at first glance because they are usually a very tough out in their own building and they already beat the Rockets once this season. Home altitude, familiar rims, the crowd energy, all of that usually nudges people toward the Nuggets almost by habit. However, there is that wild trend hanging over them, with the Nuggets sitting at 1-18-1 against the spread in their last 20 home games, when favored by 3 points or fewer. 17 of those failed covers turned into outright losses, which is the kind of pattern that is hard to ignore, even if you do not want to build your entire argument on one stat. On top of that, the Nuggets have clearly had some issues since Braun and Gordon went down, especially with their lineup balance and the way their defense holds up across 4 quarters. That makes the short line feel a little shaky, even if Denver is still winning games. This matchup also feels like a bit of a statement opportunity for the Rockets, a chance for them to keep selling themselves, internally and externally, as a real title contender rather than just a fun hot streak. 4 of the Nuggets' 6 losses have come at home, which quietly undercuts that usual automatic at-home aura. So while the Nuggets are certainly tempting at a short number in their own arena, the combination of that extreme small favorite trend, the injuries, and the Rockets' hunger tilts the argument toward taking a shot with Houston to cover as the underdog. Honestly, sometimes you just ride the uncomfortable side when the numbers keep screaming the same thing at you. As our first pick for this matchup, the Houston Rockets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The Houston Rockets are averaging 120.7 points on 48.6% shooting and allowing 110.5 points on 45.8% shooting. That combination of strong efficiency on offense with a defense that is good but not suffocating usually leads to games with plenty of scoring swings and a steady pace. The Rockets are hitting 39.6% from 3 and 79.3% from the free throw line, so their shooters and their foul line trips both help keep the total climbing rather than stalling out with wasted possessions. They allow 34.1% from deep and pull down 48.9 rebounds per game, which suggests a lot of live ball opportunities, quick outlets, and second chance looks that tend to stretch games upward in total points. On the other side, the Denver Nuggets are putting up 125.5 points on 51.7% shooting and giving up 115.9 points on 46.5% shooting. That is an even more offense-heavy profile, with a high-scoring attack and a defense that can bend for long stretches, especially when short-handed. The Nuggets are shooting 39.8% from beyond the arc and 82% from the free throw line, which pairs almost perfectly with Houston's numbers and hints at a game where both teams are very comfortable scoring from outside and from the stripe. Denver is allowing 33.9% from 3 and grabbing 44.8 rebounds per game, so there should be enough possessions and clean looks on both sides for the scoring to keep flowing. Put all of that together, and you get a matchup that projects as an up-and-down, offense-friendly game where a higher total makes sense, even if one team hits a cold stretch for a few minutes. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Memphis Grizzlies versus Los Clippers. The Memphis Grizzlies head to the Intuit Dome to face the Los Angeles Clippers on Monday night, and on paper it looks like a classic, struggling favorite versus suddenly hot underdog kind of matchup. Memphis is still without Brandon Clark, Javon Small, John Conchar, and Zach Edey, but even with all those absences, they have quietly started to get healthier in other spots and turn things around with 7 wins from their past 7 games. That kind of streak changes the mood in a locker room pretty fast, especially for a group that has been juggling injuries all season. The Clippers, on the other hand, have ruled out Bradley Beal again, with James Harden and Nicholas Batum both listed as questionable, so their rotation board still looks messy. Their recent form has been rough, and it is fair to call it horrid given the standard they set for themselves, but they were at least competitive in that narrow loss to the red-hot Rockets in their last outing, which hints that they are not completely falling apart, just not finishing games the way a contender should. I get why the Clippers are favorites at home, simply because the talent they have on paper still jumps off the page, and odds makers usually lean toward that kind of roster when the venue is friendly. They really were not far off beating the Rockets last time out, which makes it tempting to believe a small push in execution could swing things in their favor here. Still, with the injury cloud hanging over Harden and the Grizzlies suddenly playing with confidence again, it is easy to lean toward Memphis as the team that can sneak a minor upset in this spot, even if it is only by a few possessions and some timely shot making late. Honestly, this is the kind of game where the hungry road dog angle feels very real. As our first pick for this matchup, the Los Angeles Clippers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Memphis Grizzlies are averaging 114.1 points on 44.9% shooting and allowing 115.9 points on 47% shooting. That combination of decent scoring with a defense that gives up almost as much as it gets usually creates games where both teams have room to operate. The Grizzlies are hitting 34.1% from beyond the arc and 80.1% at the free throw line, which keeps their possessions reasonably efficient, and they are allowing 36.8% shooting from deep while grabbing 46.6 rebounds per game. So there are plenty of shots, plenty of misses, and plenty of second chance chances baked into their box scores. The Clippers are averaging 111.6 points on 47% shooting and allowing 116.7 points on 47.7% shooting. They shoot 35.2% from 3 and a strong 83.4% from the free throw line, which means when they do get good looks or draw contact, they tend to cash those opportunities in. Defensively, they are allowing 38.9% from beyond the arc and pulling in 40.7 rebounds per game, a profile that suggests opponents are getting clean perimeter looks and enough possessions to keep the scoreboard moving. Put together with Memphis's numbers, you are looking at a matchup where both sides can score, both sides can leak on defense, and the flow of the game naturally leans toward a higher total rather than a defensive slugfest, especially if the whistle is active and both teams live at the line for stretches. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.